My name is Chip Wood. This is our project about climate change. We're going to talk about many things, make us sound smart, and hopefully get us a good grade.
Okay.
We're going to talk about environmental justice, and in particular, climate change and environmental justice. The EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, or national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. In particular, we want to draw a contrast between the responsibility for environmental issues regarding climate change, mostly caused by more developed and wealthy countries, and the vulnerability of lower income and less wealthy countries.
So to start off our discussion, we need to first define climate change. Climate change refers to the change in both global and regional climate patterns. This first became evident in the mid-20th century. This change is due to the increasing levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide produced by the use of fossil fuels. This means that temperature extremes will intensify. The effect is different globally. The southern hemisphere will become drier and the northern hemisphere will become warmer. So why is global climate change a problem? The potential side effects of climate change include temperature increase, water shortages, food shortages, forest fires, ocean acidification, and increased storm severity, as well as many other threats such as sea level rise and potential mass extinctions. The following demonstrates what the world will look like in 2080 if nothing is done to reduce carbon emissions.
This map shows projected impact of climate change on agricultural yields from 2003 to the 2080s. Generally, you can see that countries in the northern hemisphere are less affected than countries in the southern hemisphere. Also, more industrialized countries like the United States and the European Union and China are less affected than poor countries and regions such as sub-Saharan Africa. More specifically, the CIA fact book states that 19.2% of Paraguay's GDP comes from agricultural industries, and 26.5% of the labor force is employed in that industry. In India, 17% of their GDP comes from agriculture, and 49% of their labor force is employed in that industry. Whereas in the United States and Germany, less than 1% of their workforce is employed in the agricultural industry, and it accounts for less than 1% of their GDP.
Today in the US, it is often assumed that climate change is not a significant problem because we can just adapt, but that is not the case. Adaptation is limited. There are four major ways in which our adaptation is limited. First, our ability to adapt may be limited due to the rate at which climate change is occurring. This is because climate change is so widespread and interconnected. There are irreversible losses. Second, just because we have the technology to adapt does not mean that we will actually adapt. Third, our adaptations may not be sustainable. And lastly, there will be trade-offs in adaptation, and determining what those trade-offs will be extremely difficult. Communities value things differently, whether it is in a cultural, spiritual, or historical context. Beyond the issue that adaptation poses in itself, there is also the issue with vulnerability. Some countries are more vulnerable than others to the changes of climate change. The ability of a country to adapt is not equal. Resilience is the ability of a country or area to absorb various shocks through adaptation and/or mitigation. Developed countries are vastly more resilient. Scientific research indicates that sea levels worldwide have been rising at a rate of 0.14 inches per year since the early 1990s. This has huge implications for low-lying areas. Two countries that are extremely vulnerable to the effects of climate change are the Netherlands and Kiribati. However, the Netherlands is extremely more resilient than Kiribati. As demonstrated on the map, half of the Netherlands is below sea level. The Netherlands has the fourth highest human development index in the world. As the sixth largest economy in the European Union, they have the economic means to combat climate change and adapt to sea level rise. Through an expansive system of dams, dikes, and dunes, they will be able to maintain their landmass.
Kiribati is a small island nation in the southwestern Pacific that consists of more than 30 islands. Its Human Development Index ranks 133rd in the world, and its economy is made up of 43% of foreign aid. It simply can't afford expensive infrastructure like the Netherlands, and is therefore far less resilient to the changes brought on by climate change. This map highlights global variations in carbon dioxide emissions per capita. You can easily see that the United States, Canada, Australia, Russia, and parts of Western Europe are the highest emitters per capita. You can also see that some of the poorest countries in the world, like Sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Southeast Asia, are the smallest emitters, but they tend to be the most vulnerable. Bridging the gap between varying vulnerabilities, resiliencies, and responsibilities is a seemingly impossible challenge. We concluded that environmental justice is best served by a global cap-and-trade scheme, which holds the most responsible countries for climate change accountable for their role in combating climate change. While this may not yet be a politically feasible solution, I believe we join the world in hoping for real progress during the ongoing climate negotiations in Paris.
Hey there, environmentalists. Let's talk about reducing our carbon footprint. We'll go over some ways that you can help save your planet. Bam. Why is the Earth? So what are some ways that we can make our world better? There are many easy steps that we can take day by day to help make our planet more green and also preserve it for future generations. Some of the easiest steps we can take to help preserve our world is by taking care of trash. If you have friends that you know litter, maybe you should consider unfriending them. Sprinting to class will save you a lot of time and help preserve the earth. Just testing the lens. Okay. Other easy ways you can help cut down emissions is by taking public transit. By eliminating each car on the road, we can reduce the overall carbon output per each car. I hate the environment! I hate the environment! Easy ways you can help prevent further destruction of the planet is by turning off your lights in your house. If you have a rowdy roommate who always loves leaving the lights on, make sure you turn them off. Not only will it save power on your power bill, but also save the environment. Save water,
Water conservation is one of the biggest steps and easiest that you can do to protect the planet.
So we learned a lot today. Easy steps. And we also learned that saving the planet can be fun. Important things to remember. If you drive a big car, get a small one. If you don't like walking to class, sprint. And most importantly, you have friends that litter, unfriend them. They're not your friend, and they're not the friend of the planet. We want to be able to have the planet for the rest of our lives here, and then for future generations. So do your part now, and don't be regretful later. Out.
Is this hairspray?
Oh, just talk.
Just talk real quick.
Smells like